I am Francesca, a 38-year-old single mother from Boston. For a decade, I sacrificed everything for my daughter Maddie after her father Jackson walked out on us. So when she called to tell me she was uninviting me from her college graduation to give my seat to him instead, my world shattered. I never imagined my own child could hurt me so deeply, or that I would find the strength to do what came next. Before I continue my story, let me know where you are watching from and hit like and subscribe if you have ever felt taken for granted by someone you gave everything to. I met Jackson during my sophomore year of college. He was everything I thought I wanted, charming, ambitious, with a dazzling smile that made my heart race. We were both young and impulsive, full of dreams about our future. After a whirlwind romance that had my friends concerned about its intensity, we got married when I was just 21. Looking back now, I can see all the red flags I missed, blinded by what I thought was love. A year later, we welcomed Madeline into our lives. Maddie for short. She was this perfect tiny human with Jackson's blue eyes and my dark hair. Those first few years were genuinely happy. Jackson seemed to embrace fatherhood, and I balanced finishing my nursing degree with being a new mum. We lived in a small apartment near the university, and while money was tight, we were building what I believed was a solid foundation for our future together. When Maddie was around 5, things began to shift. Jackson had landed a job at a prestigious marketing firm, and his ambition kicked into overdrive. At first, I was proud of his success, even as his hours at the office grew longer. Date nights became rare, then non-existent. Family weekends were interrupted by urgent work calls. I told myself this was temporary, that we were investing in our family's future. By the time Maddie turned 7, Jackson was a stranger in our home. He would come in late, eat the dinner I had kept warm for hours, and retreat to his home office. When I tried to talk about it, he would say I was being unsupportive of his career. The arguments started small but grew more frequent and bitter. I suggested counseling, but he dismissed the idea as unnecessary. I was determined to make it work, especially for Maddie, who adored her father despite his increasing absence. I remember one night, after tucking 8-year-old Maddie into bed, finding Jackson packing a suitcase. He claimed it was for a business trip, but something felt off. I checked his phone while he was in the shower and discovered texts with someone named Amber. The messages left no doubt about their relationship. When I confronted him, he neither denied it nor apologized. Instead, he blamed me for not being exciting anymore, for being too focused on motherhood and my nursing career. Despite this betrayal, I tried even harder to save our marriage. I arranged for my mother to watch Maddie so we could go on a weekend getaway. I made more effort with my appearance, despite exhausting hospital shifts. None of it mattered. Jackson had already checked out emotionally, and I was fighting a battle already lost. The day everything fell apart, Maddie was 12. It was a Sunday morning, and I was making pancakes, her favorite. Jackson came into the kitchen looking unusually resolute. "I need to talk to you," he said, not meeting my eyes. He told me he was leaving, not just for a few days or weeks, but permanently. He had accepted a job across the country and would be moving in with Amber, who I learned had been his co-worker for the past 2 years. The pancakes burned as I stood there speechless with shock. Maddie came downstairs, attracted by the smell of smoke, and found me in tears. Jackson chose that moment to tell our daughter he was leaving. I will never forget the look on her face. Confusion, then comprehension, then a pain so raw it nearly broke me all over again. Jackson promised Maddie he would still be part of her life. He swore he would visit monthly, call weekly, and never miss important events. He told her that sometimes adults fall out of love, but that would never change how much he loved her. Then he walked out the door with his suitcase, leaving me to pick up the pieces of our 12-year-old daughter's shattered heart. The first month after he left, Jackson called Maddie twice. The second month, once. By the third month, the calls stopped entirely. His promised monthly visits never materialized. His child support payments were sporadic and far less than what the court had ordered. When Maddie's 13th birthday came around, she waited all day by the phone for a call that never came. That night, I held her as she sobbed, trying to understand why her father had broken every promise. Suddenly, I was truly on my own. Our comfortable middle-class life quickly unraveled without Jackson's income. I picked up extra shifts at the hospital working nights so I could be there when Maddie came home from school. We moved from our suburban house to a 2-bedroom apartment in a less desirable neighborhood. I cut back on everything: cable TV, new clothes, my weekly coffee with friends. Every spare dollar went toward keeping Maddie's life as stable as possible. The financial strain was crushing, but the emotional toll was worse. Maddie struggled with abandonment issues and began acting out at school. I arranged therapy for her, working an additional weekend shift to afford it. There were nights I would collapse into bed at dawn after a 12-hour shift, only to get up 2 hours later to make Maddie breakfast and see her off to school. On particularly hard days, I would lock myself in the bathroom and cry silently, then splash cold water on my face and return to being the strong mother Maddie needed. Gradually, painfully, we rebuilt our lives without Jackson. Maddie and I developed a special bond through those difficult years. We had Sunday movie nights with homemade popcorn. I never missed a parent-teacher conference or school performance, even if it meant swapping shifts and running on no sleep. When Maddie joined the debate team in high school, I rearranged my entire work schedule to attend every competition. Jackson became a ghost in our lives, mentioned less and less frequently as the years passed. The wound of his absence never fully healed for Maddie, but it scarred over enough that she could move forward. And I poured everything I had into making sure she never doubted that she was deeply, completely loved, even if it was by just one parent instead of two. After Jackson left, my entire life revolved around Maddie and her future. I worked 60-hour weeks at the hospital, often taking the overnight shifts that paid more, but left me perpetually exhausted. When other nurses went on vacation, I volunteered to cover their shifts for the extra pay. Every Christmas bonus and tax refund went straight into Maddie's college fund. I postponed my own dreams of going back to school for my master's degree in nursing. There simply wasn't time or money for both our educations, and hers took priority without question. My personal life became almost non-existent. A few times friends tried to set me up on dates, but I always found reasons to cancel. Partly it was practical. Childcare was expensive, and my free time was precious. But if I am honest with myself, I was also terrified of bringing anyone new into our fragile world. What if I chose wrong again? What if Maddie got attached to someone who would eventually leave? It seemed safer to focus exclusively on her and my career. As Maddie entered high school, I became obsessed with her having the opportunities I never did. I researched colleges and scholarship opportunities late into the night. I drove her to SAT prep classes an hour away because they had better success rates. When she needed a laptop for schoolwork, I picked up even more overtime shifts to afford a good one. My own ancient computer remained held together with hope and duct tape. There were moments when the sacrifice felt overwhelming. I remember one night after working a 16-hour shift due to a massive pile-up on the highway, coming home to find Maddie had thrown a party while I was gone. The apartment was trashed, and she was defensive rather than apologetic. I was too exhausted to even fight with her. I just silently cleaned up the mess while she watched Netflix in her room. Later I cried in the shower where she couldn't hear me, wondering if all my sacrifices were even making a difference. But those moments were balanced by incredible pride in the amazing young woman Maddie was becoming. Despite our financial struggles and Jackson's abandonment, she maintained excellent grades. She volunteered at a literacy program for underprivileged kids. Her debate coach told me she had never seen someone with such natural talent for constructing arguments. When her SAT scores came back in the top percentile, I took her out for ice cream, a rare splurge, and we talked for hours about her dreams for the future. The college application process was intense. We stayed up late many nights perfecting essays and filling out scholarship applications. I used a week of precious vacation time to drive her to campus tours up and down the East Coast. We created spreadsheets comparing financial aid packages, academic programs, and campus safety statistics. When the decision letters started arriving, we opened each one together, holding hands tightly. The day the acceptance letter came from Westfield University, Maddie's dream school, was one of the happiest of my life. It was also terrifying. Even with scholarships and financial aid, the cost was staggering. That night, I applied for a home equity loan on our small apartment and called my mother to ask if she could contribute anything. Between my savings, the loan, and a small gift from my parents, we cobbled together enough for the first year's tuition with the understanding that we would repeat this stressful financial dance annually. Moving Maddie into her dorm room that first year nearly broke my heart, though I hid it behind encouraging smiles. After arranging her tiny room and making her bed with the new sheets we had splurged on, I hugged her goodbye, then cried the entire 3-hour drive home. The apartment felt achingly empty without her energy filling it. I had spent so long defining myself primarily as Maddie's mother that her absence left me temporarily adrift. We adjusted to our new normal. I insisted on weekly phone calls, which she initially resisted, but eventually came to appreciate, especially during stressful exam periods. I sent care packages with homemade cookies and handwritten notes, carefully budgeting for these small expenses. When she came home for breaks, I would take time off work so we could have quality time together. During her freshman year, Maddie thrived academically and socially. She joined the student newspaper and made the dean's list her first semester. She called excitedly to tell me about inspiring professors and new friends. I lived vicariously through her experiences, delighting in her every success. When she struggled with a particularly difficult economics class, I stayed up late with her on the phone helping her study, even though the material was beyond my understanding. As Maddie grew more independent at college, I slowly began rebuilding my own life. I joined a book club that met monthly and rekindled friendships I had neglected. I started a small container garden on our tiny balcony, finding unexpected joy in nurturing plants. For the first time in years, I went on a date, though it didn't lead anywhere serious. These small steps toward a life of my own felt both exhilarating and guilt-inducing, as if I was somehow betraying my role as Maddie's devoted mother. Sophomore year brought more financial strain, but also stability in our new routine. Maddie came home less frequently, but seemed happy when she did. She declared a major in journalism and landed a competitive internship at a local newspaper for the summer. I rearranged my work schedule so I could drop her off and pick her up from the internship, saving her the lengthy bus commute. We had dinner together each night that summer, and I treasured those conversations about her growing passion for investigative journalism. Throughout all these years, Jackson remained completely absent. No calls on birthdays or holidays. No contribution to college expenses despite the court order. No interest in the remarkable young woman his daughter was becoming. Maddie stopped mentioning him entirely, and I followed her lead, though I kept a careful eye out for signs that his absence was still hurting her. Occasionally, she would make a casual comment that revealed the wound was still there, like when she mentioned a friend's father attending Parents' Weekend, her voice carrying a slight edge that broke my heart. By junior year, Maddie's visits home became even less frequent, as she immersed herself in campus life. I understood this was normal and healthy, but still looked forward to our phone calls with almost desperate anticipation. I continued working extra shifts, determined to give her the freedom to focus on academics rather than working part-time jobs. Though she had a small campus job at the library, I insisted that any money she earned should be for her personal expenses, not essentials. When her laptop finally died mid-term, I overnight shipped her a new one, eating ramen for a month to offset the unexpected expense. Despite the distance and occasional teenage attitude, I remained immensely proud of Maddie. Watching her grow into an independent, intelligent, passionate young woman made every sacrifice worthwhile. I looked forward to her graduation day with almost painful anticipation, imagining the moment I would watch her walk across the stage in cap and gown, diploma in hand. I started saving immediately for a special graduation gift, and researched hotels near campus a full year in advance, booking the nicest one I could afford with a payment plan spread over several months. Little did I know that all my sacrifices and planning were about to collide with a painful reality I never saw coming. The first subtle shift in Maddie's behaviour came during the fall semester of her junior year. Our Sunday phone calls, once the highlight of my week, became shorter and less frequent. When we did talk, Maddie seemed distracted, often mentioning she had somewhere to be or something to do. I told myself this was normal. She was busy with classes, the newspaper, and an active social life. But a nagging worry took root in my mind. Around October, she mentioned something that caught my attention. "I ran into someone from my past yesterday," she said casually. When I asked who, she was vague. "Just someone I used to know. It was weird seeing them again." I didn't press, assuming it was a high school acquaintance or perhaps a former friend. This casual comment dropped into our conversation like an insignificant pebble would later reveal itself as the first warning sign of the earthquake to come. By November, our phone conversations had developed an undercurrent of tension. Maddie seemed irritable, quick to take offense at innocent questions about her classes or friends. When I asked if everything was okay, she would say, "Everything's fine," in that tone. Teenagers perfect the one that clearly communicates that nothing is fine, but they refuse to discuss it. Thanksgiving break was particularly strained. Maddie arrived home a day later than planned, claiming a last-minute group project had kept her on campus. I had taken 2 days off work to prepare cleaning our small apartment until it sparkled and cooking all her favourite foods. She spent much of her time at home texting, jumping whenever her phone pinged with a new message. When I asked who she was texting so intently, she snapped, "Why do you always need to know everything about my life?" During dinner that Thanksgiving, Maddie picked at the food I had spent hours preparing. Then she looked up and said, "Do you ever think about changing your hair? That style is kind of outdated." It wasn't said with malice, but with a kind of casual cruelty that was somehow worse. Later that evening, she commented on our apartment, asking why I hadn't updated the furniture or repainted the walls. "It's so depressing here," she said, seemingly unaware of how her words landed like slaps. I was confused by this new critical attitude. This was the same apartment where we had built our life after Jackson left the home I had worked countless extra shifts to maintain. The furniture was older, yes, but clean and functional. I had always prioritized Maddie's needs, her education, her activities, her future, over aesthetics or my own comfort. Hearing her dismiss our home so casually felt like a dismissal of all my sacrifices. That night, after she went to bed, I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, scrutinizing the hairstyle I had worn for years, because it was simple and required minimal maintenance between long nursing shifts. Was I really so out of touch? Had I become some embarrassing relic while focusing on survival and providing for us? The next day, I tried to talk to Maddie about her comments and the distance I was feeling between us. "Honey, is everything okay? You seem different lately." She rolled her eyes. "You're being too sensitive, Mom. Not everything is about you." The words stung, but I backed off, not wanting to ruin the short time we had together. When she returned to school, I spent hours questioning myself, wondering if I was overreacting. Perhaps this was just the normal separation that happens as children grow into adults. But something deeper told me this wasn't just normal growing pains. Something specific had changed. As the spring semester began, the distance between us grew. Our weekly calls became bi-weekly, then sporadic. When we did speak, Maddie shared less about her personal life and quickly steered conversations towards safe topics like her classes or campus events. When I asked about her friends or weekend activities, she would give vague answers and change the subject. One evening, scrolling through social media, I saw photos Maddie had posted of a weekend trip with friends. She looked happier than I had seen her in months, laughing with people I had never heard her mention. There were several pictures with a young man whose arm was draped casually around her shoulders. When I asked about him during our next call, she quickly said he was just a friend, and immediately started talking about a difficult assignment. As graduation approached, now just 3 months away, I threw myself into preparation. I confirmed my hotel reservation, requested time off from work, and started setting aside money for a special graduation dinner. I researched restaurants near campus and found one with excellent reviews, making a reservation 2 months in advance. I wanted everything to be perfect for Maddie's big day. I sent her a text with my arrival details, asking if she wanted me to bring her dress clothes for the ceremony or if she had everything she needed at school. She responded with a brief, "I'll let you know," and nothing more. That knot of anxiety in my stomach tightened, but I pushed it aside. Maddie was busy with senior projects and job applications. Her curtness was understandable, but as February turned to March, and March began to yield to April, I couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was happening with my daughter. Something she wasn't sharing with me. I had no idea how right that instinct was, or how painfully it would be confirmed. The call came on a Tuesday evening in early April, just 6 weeks before graduation. I had just returned home from a 12-hour shift at the hospital, my feet aching and my mind fuzzy with exhaustion. Seeing Maddie's name on my phone screen instantly energized me. It had been nearly 2 weeks since we had spoken. "Hi, sweetie," I said, unable to keep the eagerness from my voice. "Hi, Mom." Her tone was off, hesitant, with an unusual formality that immediately set off warning bells in my head. After a moment of awkward small talk about the weather and her classes, she cleared her throat. "So I have some news. Good news, I hope." I tried to keep my tone light, though dread was already pooling in my stomach. There was a pause, then she said it, "Dad's back in my life." The room seemed to tilt sideways. I sank onto the couch, my legs suddenly unable to support me. Jackson. After 10 years of complete absence. 10 years of no calls, no cards, no child support. 10 years during which I had been both mother and father to our daughter. What? It was all I could manage. He reached out to me about 6 months ago. Maddie continued, her voice gaining confidence. He found me on social media and messaged me. We've been talking regularly and he's been coming to visit me on campus. 6 months. The timeline suddenly made sense. The change in her behavior, the growing distance, the mysterious someone from her past. While I had been working overtime to pay for her senior year expenses, Jackson had been secretly rebuilding a relationship with her. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. "I knew you would be weird about it," she said dismissively. "You always get this look when his name comes up." Before I could respond to this unfair characterization, she delivered the final blow. "Anyway, about graduation. Dad really wants to come, and they only allow one guest per student because of limited seating. So I thought, since you and I see each other all the time, maybe Dad should have my ticket. The blood rushed to my head so quickly that for a moment I couldn't hear anything but the pounding of my own heart. Uninvited from her graduation, the event I had been planning for, saving for, dreaming about for 4 years, the culmination of all our struggles and sacrifices since Jackson walked out. Maddie, I finally managed. That's not true about the tickets. Westfield allows at least 4 guests per graduate. I checked their website when I made my hotel reservation. A telling silence followed. Then, well, I'd still prefer if Dad came instead. He's really trying to make amends, Mum, and you've had me for the past 10 years. Had me, as if I had possessed her rather than raised her. As if the decade of sacrifices, struggles, and unwavering support was some kind of unfair advantage I had held over Jackson. Make amends, I repeated, my voice shaking. Maddie, he abandoned you. He promised to call every week, to visit every month, and he disappeared completely. He hasn't contributed a dime to your college education. I've been working 60-hour weeks to keep you in school while you were just someone he used to know. That's not fair, she shot back, her voice hardening. People change. He's trying to do better now, after 10 years. When all the hard work is done, when you're about to graduate and become successful, now he wants back in your life. This is exactly why I didn't tell you, she said. You're so bitter about him leaving you that you can't stand the idea of me having a relationship with my father. Her words hit me like a physical blow. Bitter about him leaving me. Is that what she thought this was about? Maddie? This isn't about me and your father. This is about him walking out on you, breaking every promise he made to you, and now waltzing back in at the finish line as if he had any part in getting you there. It's my graduation, she said coldly, and I want him there instead of you. That's my decision. The conversation deteriorated from there. Words were said that perhaps we both regretted later. But the message was clear. Maddie had chosen Jackson, and I was uninvited from the most important day of her academic life. A day I had sacrificed everything to ensure she would reach. After we hung up, I sat in the dark living room for hours, tears silently streaming down my face. I pulled up the hotel reservation I had made months ago, my finger hovering over the cancel button. But I couldn't bring myself to do it yet, clinging to a desperate hope that Maddie would come to her senses. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying our conversation, searching for something I could have said differently. The hurt was physical, a tight band around my chest that made it difficult to breathe. But beneath the hurt was something else, something unfamiliar, anger. Not at Jackson. I had long ago processed my feelings about him. But at Maddie, for the first time, I allowed myself to feel angry at my daughter for her casual cruelty, for her dismissal of everything I had given her. The next morning, I discovered that Maddie had blocked me on social media. This childish act, so at odds with the mature young woman I thought I had raised, was the final confirmation that something had gone terribly wrong in our relationship. And for the first time in 10 years, I had no idea how to fix it. The week following Maddie's devastating call was one of the darkest periods of my life. I moved through my days in a fog, going through the motions at work, but barely present. My colleagues noticed something was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to explain. How do you tell people that your only child, the person you have centered your entire life around, has discarded you for the man who abandoned her? My emotions cycled unpredictably. Some moments I was consumed by hurt so acute it left me gasping. Other times a slow, burning anger would take over, making me want to call Maddie and demand she acknowledge all I had sacrificed for her. Then would come waves of doubt and self-recrimination. Had I somehow failed as a mother? Had I been too permissive, too strict, too focused on providing materially at the expense of something else she needed? I tried reaching out to Maddie several times. I sent text messages, trying different approaches, loving concern, rational discussion, emotional appeals. Her responses, when they came at all, were brief and cold. I've made my decision, or I need you to respect my choices. After 3 days of this emotional roller coaster, I called my best friend Diana. We had been close since nursing school, though our friendship had suffered during my years of single motherhood when I had little time for socializing. Diana had never had children of her own, but had always been supportive of Maddie and me. She did what? Diana exclaimed after I explained the situation. Her outrage was oddly comforting, an external validation that my hurt was justified. I don't know what to do, I admitted, my voice breaking. I've never felt so betrayed. Of course you feel betrayed. What she did is absolutely unacceptable, Diana said firmly. And this Jackson character showing up after all these years when the hard work is done, please. His timing is suspect to say the least. I keep thinking I should be more understanding, I said. She never really processed his abandonment. Maybe this is her trying to heal that wound. Fran, listen to me, Diana said using the nickname only she used. Your capacity for empathy is one of your best qualities, but there's a difference between understanding someone's pain and allowing them to treat you like a doormat. You have been killing yourself for that girl for 10 years. The least she owes you is basic respect and appreciation. We talked for hours that night, longer than I had spoken to anyone in months. Diana reminded me of all the milestones I had been there for, all the times I had put Maddie first at great personal cost. And now he swans back in for the Kodak moment, she said disgustedly. While you're uninvited after paying for the entire production, absolutely not. Before we hung up, Diana made a suggestion that initially seemed absurd. You should take that vacation you've been putting off for years. What vacation? I asked, confused. Exactly, she said pointedly. You haven't had a real vacation since Jackson left. You've spent every holiday, every break, every spare moment either working or focusing on Maddie. What if graduation weekend you did something just for you instead? I dismissed the idea immediately. Despite everything, I couldn't imagine not being in the same city as Maddie on her graduation day, even if I wouldn't be at the ceremony itself. The next day, curiosity got the better of me. I hadn't looked at Jackson's social media in years. What would be the point? But now I found myself searching for him online. His profile was public, and what I saw made my blood boil. While I had been living frugally, counting every penny to support Maddie, Jackson had been living a life of apparent luxury. There were photos of him on tropical vacations, standing beside expensive cars, dining at high-end restaurants. Recent pictures showed him with a woman who appeared to be in her late 20s, at least 15 years his junior. His job title listed him as an executive vice president at a marketing firm. Most infuriating were the comments under a photo of him and Maddie on campus, taken about 3 months earlier. Friends were congratulating him on his beautiful daughter, and what a great dad he was. One comment from him read, "So proud of my girl, can't wait for graduation day," as if he had any right to be proud, as if he had contributed anything to her success, as if the past 10 years of absence could be erased with a few campus visits and social media posts. The graduation date loomed closer. With a heavy heart, I finally cancelled my hotel reservation. The non-refundable deposit was lost, but I couldn't justify the expense of a hotel room in a city where I was now unwelcome. I took down the countdown calendar I had put on the refrigerator months earlier. I returned the special dress I had purchased for the ceremony, telling the sympathetic saleswoman it was just not the right fit, as I blinked back tears. The night before graduation, my phone rang just after 11 p.m. Seeing Maddie's name on the screen sent my heart racing. Despite everything, hope flared instantly. Perhaps she had reconsidered. Perhaps she wanted me there after all. "Maddie," I answered quickly. The sound of her crying came through the line, instantly activating my maternal instincts. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" Between sobs, the story emerged. Jackson wasn't coming to graduation. He had called Maddie that evening with some excuse about a work emergency. According to Maddie, he had sounded distracted, unapologetic, promising to make it up to her sometime in the vague future. The same hollow promises he had made 10 years ago when walking out. "He's not coming," she repeated, her voice breaking. "After everything, after I told you not to come, he's just not showing up." A small, uncharitable part of me felt a flash of vindication. Of course he wasn't coming. Reliability had never been Jackson's strong suit. But that feeling was quickly overtaken by heartbreak for my daughter experiencing her father's abandonment all over again on what should have been one of the happiest days of her life. Then came the words that stopped my momentary sympathy cold. "You'll come instead. Right, you can drive up tomorrow morning. The ceremony starts at 2. You'll still have time to make it." Not, "I'm sorry," not, "I was wrong," not even, "I need you." Just the expectation that after being discarded for the father who had abandoned her, I would drop everything and rush to fill his vacant seat, as if I were an understudy waiting in the wings in case the star couldn't perform. In that moment, with perfect clarity, I understood what had been happening. I had spent 10 years teaching Maddie that my love was unconditional, which was true, but also that my presence, my support, my sacrifices were guaranteed regardless of how she treated me. I had been so focused on compensating for Jackson's absence that I had failed to teach her an essential lesson about respect and reciprocity. As she waited on the phone for my reassurance that I would be there, I made the most difficult decision of my life. "I'm sorry, Maddie, but I can't make it," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "I've made other plans." The silence on the other end of the line was profound. Then came Maddie's incredulous response, What could possibly be more important than my graduation? The old me would have backpedaled immediately, would have apologized and rearranged everything to be there for her. The old me would have swallowed the hurt and shown up with a smile, pretending the past 6 weeks hadn't happened. But standing in my apartment, surrounded by the evidence of years of one-sided sacrifice, I found strength I didn't know I had. "It's not about importance, Maddie. It's about respect. You uninvited me from your graduation to give my place to someone who abandoned you for a decade. Now that he's disappointed you, which frankly shouldn't be a surprise, you expect me to be your backup plan. That's not how relationships work." "I can't believe this," she said, her voice rising. "You're going to abandon me too on my graduation day." The irony of her accusation was almost too much to bear. I had never abandoned her, not for a single day of her life. "I'm not abandoning you, Maddie. I'm respecting myself enough not to be your last-minute replacement. I'm showing you that my love for you is unconditional, but my presence and support require basic consideration in return." "This is so selfish," she said, her tone shifting from shocked to angry. "What kind of mother doesn't come to her daughter's graduation? What kind of daughter," I countered quietly, "uninvites her mother who raised her alone for 10 years in favor of the father who chose not to be part of her life?" The conversation deteriorated from there. Maddie alternated between crying, begging, and lashing out. Each appeal tugged at my heart, tested my resolve. But beneath the guilt and pain was a growing certainty that this boundary was necessary, not just for me, but ultimately for her too. "I hope you find someone to attend your graduation," I said finally. "I truly do, but it won't be me, not like this." After hanging up, I sat in the stillness of my apartment, expecting to feel overwhelming guilt or regret. Instead, I felt a strange mix of grief and something else, something that felt oddly like freedom. Diana's words came back to me. "You should take that vacation you've been putting off for years." In a moment of either clarity or madness, I wasn't sure which, I opened my laptop and began searching for last-minute travel deals. A beachfront resort in Florida was offering a special rate for the exact days I had taken off work for Maddie's graduation. The photos showed pristine white sand beaches, palm trees swaying in the breeze, and blue water stretching to the horizon. It would consume most of my savings, but for once, that didn't feel like the most important consideration. With hands that trembled slightly, I booked the trip, a flight leaving the next morning, 5 nights at the resort, an ocean view room. As I entered my credit card information, I felt simultaneously terrified and exhilarated. I had not done something this impulsive, this self-indulgent in over a decade. The next morning, as I packed a suitcase with summer clothes that hadn't seen use in years, my phone buzzed constantly with messages from Maddie. I glanced at them, but didn't respond. They ranged from angry accusations to tearful pleas, but none contained what I most needed to hear, an acknowledgement of how deeply she had hurt me, a genuine apology for treating me as disposable. The flight to Florida was turbulent, much like my emotions. One moment I was questioning my decision, wondering if I was making a terrible mistake that would permanently damage my relationship with my daughter. The next, I felt a surging conviction that this boundary was long overdue. By the time the plane touched down, I had resolved to truly disconnect, to give myself this time to process everything that had happened. The resort was even more beautiful than the pictures had suggested. My room overlooked the Gulf of Mexico with sliding glass doors that opened onto a small balcony where I could hear the rhythmic crashing of waves. The king-sized bed was piled high with pillows. The bathroom featured a deep soaking tub and a fruit basket. Welcomed me with a note about relaxation and renewal. That first afternoon, I walked along the shore, letting the warm water lap at my ankles. The sun was beginning to lower in the sky, casting a golden light across the water. I had brought my phone with me, but kept it turned off, tucked into my beach bag. For the first time in years, perhaps the first time since Maddie was born, I was completely untethered from responsibilities to anyone but myself. The realization brought unexpected tears. I sank down onto the sand and finally allowed myself to fully feel everything, The hurt of Maddie's rejection, the anger at her entitled expectation that I would drop everything to accommodate her last minute, need the grief for the mother-daughter relationship I thought we had. As the sun set over the water, I cried for all of it, no longer trying to be strong or understanding or self-sacrificing. Just being human with all the messy emotions that entails. That evening, I had dinner alone at the resort's restaurant, something that would have mortified me in the past. I ordered seafood and a glass of wine, and when the server asked if someone would be joining me, I smiled and said, "No, just me tonight." It felt like a small victory. The next morning, curiosity got the better of me, and I turned on my phone. The screen filled immediately with notifications. 28 text messages from Maddie, 15 missed calls, voicemails, each text message more desperate than the last, culminating in a final one sent during what would have been her graduation ceremony. "I can't believe you're not here. I'm all alone on the most important day of my life. I'll never forgive you for this." Attached was a selfie of her in cap and gown, standing alone outside the auditorium, her expression a mixture of anger and hurt. The sight of her there without family sent a pang through my heart. Then I reminded myself this was the result of her choices, not mine. She had created this situation by uninviting me, by treating me as her backup option, by failing to recognize or acknowledge how deeply her actions had hurt me. I turned the phone off again without responding and went down to the beach. That day, I met an elderly woman named Eleanor, who was also traveling alone. When she asked what brought me to the resort, I surprised myself by telling her the whole story. She listened without interruption, her eyes kind behind her sunglasses. "You know," she said when I finished, "I raised 3 children as a single mother after my husband died. They're all in their 50s now, successful with families of their own. But there was a time when my middle daughter treated me exactly as your Maddie is treating you. She took and took and took, expecting endless sacrifice without appreciation. What happened?" I asked, desperate to know how their story ended. "I did what you're doing now," she said simply. I stepped back. I let her experience the consequences of treating people as if their feelings don't matter. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but also the most important. Today, she's the one who calls me most often, who truly sees me as a person, not just as her mother. Eleanor's words stayed with me throughout the week. I began to see my relationship with Maddie through a different lens. Not just as a mother who had failed in some way, but as 2 adults with a relationship that had become dangerously unbalanced. Perhaps my endless sacrifice, while well-intentioned, had inadvertently taught Maddie that my needs and feelings were less important than hers. The days at the resort took on a healing rhythm. Mornings on the beach, afternoons exploring the small coastal town or reading by the pool, evenings watching the sunset with a dinner I hadn't had to prepare. I met other guests, had conversations that didn't revolve around nursing or motherhood. I slept deeply for the first time in years, no longer listening for a phone that might ring, with Maddie needing something. On my last evening, I finally turned my phone on again, prepared to face whatever awaited me. There were more messages from Maddie, their tone evolving from anger to confusion to a grudging recognition that perhaps she had made a mistake. The final message sent that morning was different from the others. "Mum, I think we need to talk, really talk. Please call me when you're ready." Not an apology, not yet, but a beginning perhaps, an acknowledgement that conversation was needed. I didn't call that night, allowing myself this final evening of peace. But as I packed my suitcase the next morning, I felt ready to begin the difficult process of rebuilding our relationship, this time on healthier ground. When I returned home from the resort, a lengthy email from Maddie was waiting in my inbox. Unlike her text messages, which had been emotional reactions in the moment, this was clearly something she had spent time composing. It began with a question that revealed the first glimmer of self-awareness. "Why didn't you tell me how much I was hurting you?" The truth was, I had tried to tell her, but I had also spent years prioritizing her feelings over my own, making it easy for her to dismiss my hurt as unimportant. This pattern had become so ingrained that neither of us had questioned it until now. Rather than responding immediately, I took time to process my thoughts. I wanted our conversation to be productive, not reactive. 3 days after returning home, I called her. "Mom." Her voice was uncertain, lacking the entitled tone I had grown accustomed to in recent months. "Hi, Maddie," I said, keeping my voice neutral but not cold. "I didn't think you would call," she admitted. "You didn't answer any of my messages." "I needed time," I said simply. "Time to think about what happened and what it means for our relationship going forward." There was a pause. Then she asked, "Where were you during graduation?" "I went to a beach resort in Florida. I said, half expecting her to react with outrage that I had been on vacation while she was alone at her graduation. Instead, there was another long pause. "You've never taken a vacation," she said finally, a note of realization in her voice. "Not once since Dad left." "No," I agreed. "I haven't." This simple exchange seemed to shift something between us. For the first time, Maddie appeared to be seeing me, not just as her mother, an identity defined by what I could provide for her, but as a person with my own needs and feelings. We agreed to meet in person the following weekend. Maddie would come to the apartment and we would have the difficult conversation we both knew was necessary. I spent the intervening days reflecting on what I wanted to say, determined to be honest about my hurt without using it as a weapon. When Maddie arrived, I was struck by how small she looked, how young despite being 22 and a college graduate. Her usual confidence was missing, replaced by an uncertainty that reminded me of her early teen years after Jackson left. We sat at the kitchen table where we had shared thousands of meals, homework sessions, and conversations over the years. The familiar setting highlighted how much had changed between us. "I'm sorry," Maddie began, her eyes fixed on her hands. "I know those words aren't enough, but I am truly sorry for how I treated you." I nodded, acknowledging her apology without immediately absolving her. "Can you tell me what you're sorry for specifically?" This question seemed to surprise her. "For uninviting you from graduation, for expecting you to come at the last minute when Dad bailed, for not appreciating everything you've done for me." "Thank you," I said. I needed to hear that. Maddie took a deep breath, then continued with something I hadn't expected. "I found out why Dad suddenly wanted back in my life. He asked me for money last week." My eyes widened. "Money?" She nodded, looking embarrassed. "Those photos on social media, the expensive car, the vacations. It was all fake. He's in serious debt. He thought since I was graduating from a good university, I must have connections to jobs that could help him, or that I might have money saved." The pieces clicked into place. Jackson's sudden reappearance in Maddie's life had never been about reconnecting with his daughter. It had been a calculated move to exploit her at a vulnerable time. "When I told him I have student loans and no job lined up yet, he lost interest pretty quickly," she continued. "I haven't heard from him since graduation. He's ghosted me. Again." My heart broke for her. Despite everything, she was still my daughter, and Jackson had hurt her deeply all over again. The urge to comfort her, to protect her from pain, was almost overwhelming. But I recognized that rushing in to fix everything would only reinforce the unhealthy dynamic we had developed. "I'm very sorry he disappointed you again," I said sincerely. "That must be incredibly painful." Tears filled her eyes. "The worst part is I chose him over you. I threw away our relationship for someone who never actually cared about me." She looked up, meeting my gaze directly. "How could I have been so stupid?" "You weren't stupid," I said gently. "You were hoping for something we all want, a relationship with both parents. That's natural, Maddie. But I hurt you so badly in the process," she said. "And you've never done anything but support me. Even when you had every right to be angry about Dad, you never said a bad word about him to me. You worked impossible hours to give me everything I needed. You were always there for me no matter what. And I just discarded you." Her recognition of these facts, without my having to enumerate my sacrifices, felt like a crucial step forward. For the first time, she seemed to truly see the depth of what I had given her, not just materially, but emotionally. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away," she continued. "I know trust has to be rebuilt, but I want you to know that I understand what I did wrong and I'm committed to making it right." I reached across the table and took her hand. "I do forgive you, Maddie. But forgiveness doesn't mean we don't need to change how our relationship works. For too long, I've been willing to sacrifice everything for you without requiring basic consideration in return. That's not healthy for either of us." She nodded, squeezing my hand. "I want to do better. I want to be the kind of daughter you deserve." We spent hours that day talking more honestly than we had in years. I shared how hurt I had been by her criticisms of my appearance and our home. She admitted that she had been parroting Jackson's judgmental comments trying to impress him. I told her how devastating it felt to be uninvited from her graduation after all we had been through together. She cried as she apologized this time, with specific acknowledgement of the pain she had caused. In the weeks that followed, we began the slow process of rebuilding our relationship on healthier ground. Maddie moved back home temporarily while job hunting, but instead of falling back into old patterns, we established new ones. She contributed to household expenses from her graduation money. We took turns cooking dinner. When she spoke sharply to me out of stress one evening, I calmly pointed it out, and she immediately apologized. My impromptu vacation had awakened something in me. I joined a hiking club that met on weekends, making friends who had nothing to do with being a mother or a nurse. I started taking classes toward that long-delayed master's degree. I went on a few dates with a kind doctor I met through work, enjoying his company without rushing into anything serious. Maddie noticed these changes. "You seem different, Mom," she said one evening as we washed dishes together. "Happier." "I am," I acknowledged. "I'm learning to balance caring for you with caring for myself." "I like seeing you this way," she said thoughtfully. "I never realized how much you gave up for me until I saw you starting to take things for yourself." It wasn't always smooth sailing. Old habits died hard on both sides. Sometimes Maddie would make presumptuous requests, and I would have to remind her gently that my time and resources were not automatically at her disposal. Sometimes I would start to slip back into martyrdom, and she would encourage me to maintain my boundaries. We were both learning, stumbling sometimes, but committed to creating something better than what we had before. 3 months after graduation, Maddie found a job at a small newspaper in a city about 2 hours away. As she prepared to move, I helped her find an affordable apartment and shop for necessary furnishings. The night before she left, we sat on our tiny balcony, sharing a bottle of wine. "I never properly thanked you," she said suddenly, "for everything you did to get me to graduation. Not just the money and the practical support, but for believing in me even when things were really tough." "You don't need to thank me for loving you," I said. "That part is unconditional." "I know," she nodded. "But I do need to thank you for everything else. For the sacrifices, the long hours, the hard work. And mostly, I need to thank you for what you did at graduation." I looked at her surprised. "For not coming?" "Yes," she said seriously. "It was the first time you chose yourself over me, and it was exactly what I needed. It made me see you, really see you, as a person, not just as my mom who would do anything for me, no matter how I behaved." We were both quiet for a moment, watching the stars emerge in the evening sky. "I'm still so sorry I put you through that," she continued. "But I'm grateful too, because I think we have a better relationship now than we did before. More honest, more balanced." She was right. As painful as the graduation incident had been, it had forced us to confront patterns that had been unhealthy for both of us. My endless sacrifice had enabled her entitlement. My refusal to prioritize myself had taught her that my needs were less important than hers. The next day, as I helped Maddie load the last of her belongings into her car, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Pride in the young woman she was becoming, one who was learning from her mistakes. Sadness at seeing her leave home again. But also a new sense of peace about our relationship and about my own future. We hugged goodbye, holding each other tightly. "I love you, Mom," she whispered. "Thank you for teaching me that love doesn't mean being a doormat." "I love you too," I replied. "Always have, always will." As I watched her drive away, I realized something profound. The most loving thing I had ever done for my daughter wasn't the countless nights of lost sleep, the extra shifts at the hospital, or the dreams I had deferred. The most loving thing I had done was showing her that I valued myself enough to walk away when treated with disrespect, even by her. That lesson would serve her better in life than any amount of self-sacrifice ever could. What about you? Have you ever had to set a painful boundary with someone you love? Did it change your relationship for better or worse? Leave a comment below and share your experience. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's sometimes the most loving thing you can do. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, true love honors both people in the relationship, not just one.